Okay, so we're now back on this corner and getting, hopefully speaking, the new piece welded on. Basically go from roughly here out and across. Now you will remember that last video I did, it was all coated in red oxide. Now an error that I realised that I made there was the fact that red oxide primer doesn't conduct electricity, and therefore you can't weld through it. Well, I'm not sure if you can anyway, I've never tried it, and according to the can that I've just read, it says it's got high anti-corrosion inhibitants in it, but nothing to do with welding. So I've got myself a can of aerosol zinc weld primer, so now I'll give that a new coating in that, and it just basically means that there's something on this surface here to protect it from going rusty, but then when you put the new piece on and then I drill a couple of holes to weld the new piece down to this part, it actually welds on, and just splatter because there's paint in the way that doesn't conduct it. I only realised that in order to weld the plate over here, it would be ideal to clean this bit of metal up here, because if we offer that up, it covers this area. So I've just sanded this lot here all the way back to nice shiny metal. Before I start putting any zinc primer on there, I'm going to add some fertile rust converter, and that will just basically certainly make sure that any rust in that little section is definitely hopefully killed off. But also the fertin stuff actually also acts as a type of primer for the surface. So I'll still give a key over though and put a bit of zinc primer on, just gives it double protection in theory. So yeah, while that stuff's drying off, I'm going to give this wire area here a bit of a wire wheel up and see what we hopefully at least see what we're dealing with. It's now in bare metal. I've just used a wire wheel on it and got it into some really nice and clean stuff. Now I'm at a bit of a crossroads now, because I'm not too sure which approach to take. There's the approach of cut the hole out and put new metal in there, which would be ideal. Or there's the other approach, which is I just try and weld the holes up with some welding wire and just fill it all up with new metal. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure what the best action is. I've made up a template donor piece, but it's a matter of, is it making a mountain out of a molehill by trying to cut the whole lot out and put new metal in, or is it the right thing to actually do? Now I think the most appropriate action to take now, which will decide that, is to simply take the welding torch to it and just see if I can fill in the holes. If I can fill them in and I don't constantly keep blowing holes through the rest of it, then to me it would be a fairly good indication that the metal around it is pretty good still, and it's just these small local areas. But if it keeps on blowing holes through, I think that would probably be the best signifier to tell me that it would be doing the job properly to try and cut it out and put new metal in there. But it's that very much point where I'm not entirely sure. I think I'm just going to have to go with my gut feeling and see how things go. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll show you very, very soon, hopefully, which route was the better one to take. Well, that's just answered the question. This one here, it just kept on making the hole bigger. I managed to get it filled up, but obviously it looks absolutely horrendous. And then you got this one here, which I've literally just hit it a couple of times with the lance, and as you can see, it's just blowing the hole bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm just going to take lots of pictures of this area, cut this little bit out, and hopefully put a nice new piece in there, because it's quite obvious from what it's doing when I try and weld it that this bit of metal is just frankly rotten. So what is the point? Okay, so a very quick conclusion I come to. I'm going to run the grinder along this very bottom edge here, just enough that I can separate that piece from this lower piece. Probably around about here, because there's no reason to go any further. I'll try to basically cut inwards into this piece here, and that just means I can separate this part here, because that bit there is the bit that needs to be replaced, and then I can hopefully potentially sort of go up like that and down and back in, but obviously it never goes that simply, so all I can do is try my very best, and I'll show you how I get on as I progress. I actually managed to uncover an even better approach. Using a little sander, go right along that very edge, and just where the thin piece of that one is overlapping here, I've just sanded it back to the point where I've just about made a crack that you might be able to see just in the middle there, which should now allow me to separate them away. And that means that edge is as intact as humanly possible, and I can't have cut through it with a grinder. I'm currently just in the process of cleaning this little area up. I've managed to very, very delicately remove what is basically just a bad metal from what I can see. So I've got up to this edge here where it seems to be fairly okay. Although saying that, it may actually be necessary in all honesty to cut up to here now, to say that, because you can still see a little bit of pitting going on in there. That I think is just a spot weld. Yeah, I feel like it's just a spot weld. Yeah, I might actually. There we go, chaps. So what I've done is I've managed to basically grind along this bottom edge very, very carefully, which just separated the top layer here. I've then gone along this top edge with both the grinder wheel, or is the angle grinder itself, and also tin snips wherever required, because you can't get into certain tiny nooks and crannies. So I've just done whatever I can basically just to get the rotten piece out as delicately as possible. What I'm now doing is running through that area with some typical sandpaper you put on a DA. Just cut it up and use it with your fingers, and then I can put a bit of rust treater round inside here to make sure that any other surface rust inside there is taken care of. And then I'll put a bit of zinc primer on it, so I can then start making up the new piece to go inside. Obviously I use zinc primer because that then means I can just weld straight onto it and I haven't got to worry about grinding it back off again later and doing the same anyway. So yeah, right, I'm really happy with that so far. As for this area here, the fert and stuff's definitely all now gone off nice and dry. So now all I've got to do on that bit is obviously key that back up, and then put a bit of this zinc primer back on it to make sure it's definitely good to go. And then I can hopefully start putting the new piece of metal along that edge. So we're making some really good progress I think today. Alright guys, so it suddenly occurred to me to check that what I've made up as a plate for this area on the opposite side of the car is actually right, because obviously, as you'll remember, this area here on my original on the other side was completely rotted away, so there's no way to actually use reference except make a solid bit of metal and just patch over the top of it. So I've gone over to this side, and as we can see, this actually curves in at this far end, and also it's actually been bent over into a lip starting from around about here. So what I've done is I've taken rough guide measurements, put mine in a vise, and basically just sit there whacking it with the chisel and the hammer for a little while to just about get a nice edge that should be about right. And if I offer it up like so, it's generally a pretty good match. So hopefully that will suffice quite nicely, fingers crossed. Okay chaps, so we're now at the point where I'm happy to weld this piece in. As I showed you in the video before this one, I've actually moulded it and tried to replicate the one on the other side of the car, because obviously the car's front wing mounts onto here, and you don't, if it's and you want to make sure you're following the shape of the car underneath that, otherwise it will probably obscure and foul the wing. So I've replicated this sort of 90-degree curve on the edge here that the other side has. I've then realised that this side has got a different shape inner wing. The other one's flat, this one's curving outwards and bulging. So what I've done is I've kept this bit of the curve here, not sure whether or not it's going to make any difference at all. But then on this area just here, where you can't physically get that 90-degree to fit, I've just flattened it out a touch, so that basically the piece now fits in there nice and snug. And yeah, I've just basically made it fit properly, and now all I've got to do is obviously go around that edge and put a nice few tacks in there to hold it in place, and then obviously I've just got to make it a nice uniform fit all the way around, and then after that drill a couple of holes in this area here so we can attach it to this piece underneath. Obviously first it'd be ideal to put some zinc primer on this side here, so that when it goes and mates down like so, you're not leaving a bare metal surface, otherwise again just asking for rust to develop. I am incredibly impressed. This is probably the best neatest bit of fabrication I've ever done, and I also now feel like I can really tune in with my welder quite well as well. So yeah, that one there, that weld just there that looks really rubbish, it's because it is rubbish. It's because I hadn't actually got that bit as clean on the metal side of things as I thought, hence why I cleaned it up better, and then the ones right next to it were better welds. So yeah, I just need to go around and basically fill up all these little gaps, you can see. I tried to do it with a few lines of weld, but yeah, generally speaking, I'm really impressed with that. It looks a very, very neat little repair, that one. I'm really impressed. I just need to obviously grind all these back now, so I can see exactly where I'm at and what I've got to do next to finish it off. All grinded back, we're now going to go over the small areas that just need a little bit more welding, like these little gaps here. So, very happy so far. I am really, really happy with this bit. It's gone on really nicely. It's tied it up most of the way now. Need to do a little bit still. All I've got to do now really in terms of welding is drill 2 holes here, so I can basically do effectively a couple of plug welds onto the inner piece I repaired last week. So really impressed. Voila, that is the finished piece. I've just done a couple of plug welds here to joint to the piece I did last weekend. But that is it. We have ground it all back nicely. I'm just now going to give it a nice coat of red oxide primer to basically inhibit any rust starting to develop on it. So really happy with that overall. One finished repair. So tomorrow the little repair here will be the job, hopefully, provided we don't have any change plans. Thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.